The cowboy was left raising his brother's children until she walked in with warm bread and a smile. The sun hung low over the ochre canyons of planet Kestrel, painting the rugged cliffs in shades of gold and rust. Dust swirled around the small homestead where Jack Morgan stood, staring at the horizon. The wind whispered through the dry grass, carrying a faint metallic tang from the distant mining colony. He tugged at the brim of his wide hat and adjusted his gloves. Life out here was hard, but Jack had survived because he knew how to make the desert yield to human determination. Jack's hands were calloused from years of handling bioengineered livestock, animals designed to survive the harshest planetary climates. Herding them was exhausting, but he had always found satisfaction in the rhythm of the work. That rhythm, however, had been broken abruptly. 2 months ago, his brother had died in a mining accident, leaving behind 2 children and a mountain of responsibility. Eli, 9, had his father's sharp green eyes and an endless curiosity that often got him into trouble. Leela, 7, was quiet, thoughtful, and surprisingly brave for someone so small. They had arrived at Jack's homestead with little more than a few suitcases, a worn-out backpack, and a collection of memories that seemed too heavy for their young shoulders. Jack had never imagined raising children. His life had been about the frontier, the cattle, the storms, and the endless horizon. Children were unpredictable, messy, and exhausting. But looking at Eli and Leela, their wide eyes trusting him entirely, he realized he had no choice. They were family, and family came first. "Jack," Eli's voice rang from the corral. "I think Snowflake is stuck again." Jack sighed, wiping his forehead with the back of his sleeve. Snowflake, the smallest of the herd, had a habit of wandering into tight spaces and getting trapped. Jack pushed open the corral gate and jogged toward the commotion. Sure enough, Snowflake had wedged herself between 2 jagged rocks. "Easy, girl," Jack murmured, crouching to free her. Eli and Leela watched, eyes wide. Jack lifted Snowflake carefully, her small hooves dangling in the air. "See, nothing to worry about. Sometimes you just need a steady hand." Eli grinned. "I want to learn that too." Jack gave a small, tired smile. "You will, but first let's make sure everyone gets fed." Back at the homestead, Jack moved through the small kitchen, lighting a burner and preparing a simple meal. The children had learned to help, and Leela was setting the table with the precision of a mini soldier. Jack's gaze softened. The first week had been chaotic, burned meals, spilled water, and more questions than he could count, but they were learning together. The sky outside had turned a deep orange, the kind of color that made the canyon walls glow as if they were alive. Jack stepped outside to call the herd in for the night. He watched as the children ran alongside him, laughing as the animals followed obediently. Even in the desolation of Kestrel, life found a rhythm. That night, as they ate together, Jack listened to the children talk about their day at the makeshift school he had set up in the corner of the living room. Eli was excited about a lesson on energy cells, while Leela spoke softly about the desert plants and how some of them could purify water. Jack admired their curiosity. Humanity, he realized, had a resilience unlike anything else in the galaxy. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about learning, adapting, and thriving even when the odds were stacked against them. After dinner, Jack tucked the children into their bunk beds. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll work on building a wind trap to catch extra water. It's not much, but every drop counts out here." Eli yawned but smiled. "Can we do it together?" Jack nodded. "Of course." As he closed the door to their room, Jack felt a strange mix of exhaustion and hope. Raising 2 children was nothing like he had imagined. It was harder and more demanding than herding the most stubborn livestock or surviving a sandstorm. Yet, it was also more rewarding than anything he had ever done. The desert night was quiet, except for the occasional howl of distant creatures and the rustle of wind against the canyon walls. Jack stepped outside and looked up at the stars. From this remote corner of the galaxy, the lights of distant planets were visible, faint and shimmering like tiny fires. He thought of his brother, gone too soon, and the responsibility he had inherited. But Jack also thought of Eli and Leela, bright, clever, resilient children, and he felt a determination stronger than ever. He would protect them. He would teach them. And he would find a way to make life on this harsh planet not just bearable but joyful. Suddenly, a scent drifted on the wind, cutting through the familiar aroma of dust and livestock. It was sweet, warm, and impossible in this barren land, the smell of freshly baked bread. Jack froze, his senses alert. He scanned the horizon, but there was nothing. No smoke, no lights, no sign of another human. Eli and Leela's curiosity pulled him back inside, but the smell lingered. It was strange, comforting, and foreign all at once. Jack couldn't explain it, but a small, quiet hope stirred in him. Perhaps this desert, harsh as it was, still had surprises in store. The night passed with a restless energy. Jack lay in his cot, thinking about the children, the herd, and the strange smell of bread. In the morning, he would have to face another day of chores, lessons, and survival. But for the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt since before tragedy. The possibility of help, of kindness, of human warmth in a cold, indifferent world. As the first rays of sunlight spilled over the canyon, Jack stood at the edge of the homestead and watched the world wake. Eli and Leela were already outside, chasing each other between the rocks, their laughter echoing against the cliffs. Jack took a deep breath, ready to face the challenges ahead. The frontier was harsh, unforgiving, and lonely, but Jack knew that with the children by his side, and perhaps a little help from unexpected sources, humanity's spirit could shine even here. And somewhere in the distance, he could swear he smelled bread again. The day had just begun. The morning sun bathed the canyon in a soft, golden glow. Jack adjusted the straps of his leather satchel and called out to the children. "Breakfast is ready. Come on before the herd wanders off again." Eli and Leela raced out, their bare feet kicking up small clouds of red dust. They each grabbed a small plate from the wooden table and climbed onto the low stools. Jack handed them a simple meal of dried fruit, bread crisps, and a little rehydrated milk. It wasn't fancy, but in this desert it was enough. As they ate, Jack heard the faint crunch of boots on gravel. He frowned. There weren't supposed to be any visitors today. On the frontier, people didn't just appear out of nowhere. Before he could react, a woman stepped into the open space outside the homestead. She was carrying a wicker basket, lined with a clean cloth, and the warm, comforting smell of freshly baked bread followed her like a shadow. Her hair was a soft chestnut, tied back neatly, and her eyes shone with a friendly warmth. "Hello there," she called, her voice clear and cheerful. "I hope I'm not intruding." Jack straightened, his hand instinctively going to his belt, though there was nothing to grab. Who are you?" he asked, cautious. "I'm Myra," the woman said with a small bow of her head. "I trade between the colonies, sometimes delivering supplies. I noticed your homestead from the canyon road, and, well, I thought you might like some fresh bread. It's hard to find good bread out here." Eli's eyes widened. "Bread, really?" Myra smiled and lifted the basket, showing a stack of golden loaves still warm. The aroma filled the air, making Leela's stomach rumble. "Yes, really," she said. "Baked this morning. I promise it's safe." Jack blinked, torn between suspicion and curiosity. Visitors were rare, and the desert didn't forgive careless trust, but the sight of the children's eager faces softened his resolve. "All right," he said cautiously. "You can leave it here, but I warn you, I don't usually take charity from strangers." Myra laughed lightly. "I'm not here to take anything. Just thought a little kindness might go a long way." The children rushed forward, picking up the bread and sniffing it with delight. Jack watched, still wary, but a small sense of relief crept into his chest. The desert was lonely, and even the smallest human connection could feel like a miracle. As they sat down to taste the bread, Jack finally let himself relax slightly. Myra had a calming presence, the kind that made even a rough, dusty homestead feel a little more like home. "Would you like to sit with us?" Jack asked, surprising himself with the invitation. "I would love to," Myra said, setting her basket down. She pulled up a small stool, careful not to disturb the simple routine Jack had established. The children chatted excitedly, talking about their chores, the herd, and the little inventions Jack had built to make life easier on Kestrel. Myra listened with genuine interest, asking questions that encouraged them to explain their ideas. "You built this wind trap yourself?" she asked, pointing to a small device on the porch that collected moisture from the air. Jack nodded. "Yeah, it's not much, but it helps us get a little extra water. Every drop counts." Myra smiled. "Humans are incredible. You can survive anywhere, even in a place like this. I'm always amazed." Jack felt a flicker of pride. Myra had a way of noticing the small victories, the everyday ingenuity that often went unseen. It was refreshing, almost humbling. After breakfast, Myra helped the children clean up. Leela was careful to wipe the table, while Eli stacked plates neatly. Jack watched, impressed by how quickly Myra adapted to their little routines. She wasn't imposing, just quietly helpful, and it made the homestead feel lighter, warmer. When the chores were done, Myra sat with Jack on the porch, letting the children play nearby. The desert stretched endlessly around them, rugged and beautiful, yet unyielding. "You've done a good job here," Myra said softly, looking out over the herd grazing in the canyon. "I can see your brother's influence, but also yours. You've kept them safe." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "It hasn't been easy. They're kids. They need more than just food and shelter. They need someone who's steady, reliable. I'm not sure I'm good enough for that." Myra's eyes were kind but firm. "Jack, you've done more than you think. Look at them, they trust you completely. And trust is rare, especially on a planet like this. You're giving them stability, safety, and love. That's more than enough." Jack stared at her, unsure how to respond. Compliments didn't come easily to him, especially from strangers. But Myra had a way of seeing past his rough exterior to the heart beneath. "Thank you," he said quietly, tipping his hat. Myra smiled and leaned back, letting the sun warm her face. "You know, kindness is contagious. Sometimes even a small gesture, a loaf of bread, a smile can change everything." Before Jack could respond, Myra's expression shifted, a subtle seriousness entering her voice. "There's something I should mention. I've been traveling between colonies, and I've heard whispers about trouble brewing. Some merchants and traders are planning to push smaller settlements off the frontier. They want to control resources, water, livestock, trade routes. And places like this homestead," she paused, her eyes scanning the horizon. "They're vulnerable." Jack's jaw tightened. "We've dealt with raiders before. The herd is safe and the children, well, we manage." Myra shook her head. "This isn't just raiders. These are organized groups. They have ships, tech, and resources. But humans, they're clever, adaptable. You've already proved that just by surviving here. If we work together, we can make sure your family and this homestead stays safe." Jack studied her carefully. She wasn't threatening. She wasn't exaggerating. And somehow he believed her. Maybe it was the warmth in her eyes, the calm confidence she carried, or the bread that still smelled heavenly in the basket beside her. Eli ran over, holding a small piece of the bread. "Myra, it's amazing. Can we have more later?" Myra laughed. "Of course. I'll bring more next time." Jack allowed himself a small smile. For the first time since his brother died, he felt a little less alone. Myra's presence was unexpected, but it was exactly the kind of help he needed. Someone who could see the human potential in the children, and perhaps even in him. The day passed with Jack showing Myra the intricacies of frontier life. He explained how to herd livestock, check water traps, and protect the homestead from natural hazards. Myra absorbed every lesson, asking insightful questions and offering practical suggestions of her own. By evening, Jack realized something remarkable. Myra was not just a visitor. She was a bridge to a larger world, one that could help them thrive rather than merely survive. As the sun dipped below the canyon walls, painting the sky in fiery shades of red and orange, Jack found himself standing at the edge of the homestead once more. Myra had gone to set up a small camp nearby, but her presence lingered in the quiet air, like the warmth of the bread she had brought. Leela tugged at Jack's sleeve. "Do you think she'll stay?" Jack looked down at her, the weight of responsibility still heavy on his shoulders, but a new sense of hope growing inside him. "I don't know," he admitted, "but maybe we don't have to do everything alone anymore." Eli nodded eagerly. "She's nice, and she brought bread." Jack chuckled despite himself. "Yes, she did, and that's important, I suppose." That night, as the children slept, Jack sat outside under the stars. The desert was vast, silent, and sometimes unforgiving, but with Myra nearby, the horizon didn't seem quite so lonely. For the first time since his brother's death, Jack allowed himself to imagine the future, not just surviving, but thriving. With human ingenuity, kindness, and a little help from unexpected friends, anything seemed possible. The warm scent of bread lingered in his mind, a small reminder that even in the harshest places, humanity had the power to create comfort, hope, and connection. And somewhere deep in the canyon, Jack knew the frontier had only just begun to reveal its secrets. The morning air was crisp and clear, carrying the faint scent of dry earth and wildflowers. Jack stood at the edge of the canyon, surveying the homestead and the surrounding plains. Myra had slept in her small camp nearby, and the children were already awake, their laughter drifting on the wind as they ran to fetch water from the storage tanks. Jack adjusted the straps of his satchel, feeling the weight of the day ahead. "Today," he announced, "we're going to improve our wind trap. If it works right, we can collect enough water to last a week." Eli's eyes lit up. "Really? Can we help?" Jack nodded. "Of course. You'll learn the way humans survive in places most people wouldn't dare to live." Leela tilted her head. "Like explorers." "Exactly," Jack said with a small smile. "Explorers, engineers, inventors. Humans can make life better even in the harshest places. And today, you're going to learn a little of all three." Myra appeared from her camp, carrying a small toolkit and several rolls of wire. "I thought I could lend a hand," she said cheerfully. "Maybe even make your wind trap more efficient." Jack nodded in approval, though he felt a hint of pride mixed with caution. Myra was clever, but he needed to make sure the children weren't overwhelmed. They started with the wind trap. Jack explained how it worked. The angled panels would catch wind, funneling it into the condensation chamber. Myra suggested adding small mirrors to focus sunlight and speed up evaporation, and the children helped adjust the panels and secure the wires. "Be careful with the edges," Jack warned. "Metal can cut, and we don't want any accidents." The children worked carefully, and soon the small device hummed quietly as it began to collect tiny droplets of water. Jack marveled at their quick learning. Human children, he thought, had a resilience that even the strongest adults sometimes lacked. After their success with the wind trap, Jack led the group to the canyon walls to teach them another essential frontier skill: finding safe shelter in unexpected conditions. "The desert isn't forgiving," Jack said. "Sandstorms can come without warning. You need to know how to protect yourselves." He showed the children a small alcove carved into the canyon wall, pointing out natural windbreaks and how to reinforce them with stones and wood. Myra assisted, suggesting ways to use lightweight panels to shield against falling debris while maintaining ventilation. "Why do humans do this?" Eli asked, watching the construction. Jack smiled. "Because we adapt. No matter where we go, humans find a way to survive. We learn, we observe, we experiment, and we protect each other. That's what makes us strong." Leela nodded seriously. "So we're learning to survive like our ancestors." "Exactly," Jack said. You're part of a long line of people who refused to give up, no matter how difficult life became. By midday, they had built a small, reinforced shelter that could withstand moderate storms. Myra inspected their work, impressed by the children's attention to detail. "This is excellent," she said. "You've all done a great job. Humans really are capable of amazing things when they work together." The children beamed with pride, while Jack felt a quiet satisfaction. Myra's presence had a way of bringing out the best in them, and he was grateful for her help. As they rested in the shade of the canyon wall, Myra brought out a small portable stove and heated water for tea. The aroma of herbs filled the air, blending with the warm scent of the desert. "You've taught them a lot today," Myra said, pouring the tea. "But there's one more lesson I think they should learn." Jack raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "Observation," Myra replied. "Humans survive not just with strength or tools. We survive because we notice patterns, we see danger before it arrives, and we make decisions based on what we observe. That skill can save lives." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "All right. How do you propose we teach that?" Myra smiled. "We'll do a small challenge. I'll hide 3 markers along the canyon trails. You have 30 minutes to find them all. Use your eyes, your ears, your mind. Work together." Eli's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Yes, let's do it." Leela nodded, determined. "We can do it." Jack and Myra guided them to the starting point. "Remember," Jack said, "pay attention to everything. The desert can trick you, but humans can think faster than the wind." The children dashed off, scanning rocks, shrubs, and shadows. Myra whispered guidance from a distance, giving subtle hints about where to look without revealing the markers. Jack observed quietly, impressed by the children's focus. After several tense minutes, Eli shouted, "I found one," holding up a small carved stone. Leela discovered the second marker hidden under a cluster of dry branches. The third marker proved trickier, nestled in a shallow alcove. "Got it!" Eli exclaimed triumphantly, holding up the last marker. Jack clapped, feeling a surge of pride. "Excellent work. You two just learned one of the most important skills humans have: observation and patience. That will keep you alive out here better than any weapon." Myra smiled warmly. "You've done more than survive today. You've learned to think like humans do: creative, clever, resilient." As the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the canyon, Jack decided to test the wind trap they had repaired in the morning. Tiny droplets had already begun to collect, glinting in the sunlight. He carefully poured the water into a small container. It wasn't much, but every drop counted. "See this," Jack said to the children. "This is human ingenuity. We make life better even when nature seems to be against us. Every little success matters." Eli and Leela leaned in, their faces shining with excitement. "It worked," Leela whispered. Myra nodded. "It worked because humans never give up. We find solutions, we help each other, and we keep trying." Jack felt a warm glow inside. For the first time since his brother's death, he felt that they were not just surviving. They were learning, growing, thriving. The children were clever, Myra was resourceful, and he was learning too. Learning that strength wasn't just in muscle or courage, but in patience, teamwork, and hope. The day ended with the 4 of them sitting around a small fire Myra had built. The children roasted small pieces of bread she had brought, and Jack watched them laugh, telling stories about the day's discoveries. "Tomorrow," Jack said thoughtfully, "we'll work on expanding the water collection system and fortifying the shelter further." "Humans never stop improving. That's how we survive," Myra nodded. "And we do it together. That's what makes us strong." As the stars appeared overhead, twinkling against the velvet night sky, Jack felt a profound sense of gratitude. The desert was harsh, lonely, and unpredictable, but humanity, he realized, could shine anywhere. With intelligence, creativity, and cooperation, even the most unforgiving frontier could become a home. Eli yawned, resting his head against Jack's shoulder. Leela leaned against Myra, holding her hand. Jack looked at Myra, a silent understanding passing between them. They were not just strangers brought together by circumstance. They were a team, bound by trust, care, and the determination to thrive. Jack gazed out at the canyon one last time that night. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, the relentless sun, shifting sands, and the unpredictability of life on Kestrel. But for now, he allowed himself a rare moment of peace. The frontier was wide and unforgiving, but humans were unstoppable. They could invent, adapt, and survive. They could find water in the driest places, shelter from the fiercest storms, and hope in the darkest times. And as he watched the firelight dance on Myra's face and the children's sleepy eyes, Jack knew one thing with certainty. Together, they could face anything the desert or the universe threw at them. The night carried the soft sounds of distant wildlife and the gentle rustle of the wind. Jack closed his eyes briefly, breathing in the warm air, feeling the quiet triumph of a day well spent. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe that the future held promise. That with ingenuity, kindness, and a little teamwork, even the harshest frontier could be tamed. And most importantly, that they, Jack, Eli, Leela, and Myra, could thrive together. The desert night was silent but full of possibilities, and Jack smiled, knowing that human resilience would always shine, even in the most unforgiving places. The sun rose over Kestrel with an almost harsh brilliance, turning the canyon walls into glowing pillars of gold and amber. Jack stood outside, surveying the homestead. Myra was already moving among the livestock, checking fences and water tanks, while Eli and Leela helped carry supplies. Jack took a deep breath. Life on the frontier was rarely quiet for long. Today he had a feeling in his chest, a quiet warning that something was coming. "I want everyone alert today," Jack said, his voice low but firm. "We've got strong winds predicted and the herd has been restless. Keep an eye out for anything unusual." Myra nodded. "Agreed." "I've also been monitoring the trade routes. There's been talk of organized raiders moving through nearby canyons. They may not come directly here, but we should be prepared." Eli's eyes widened. "Raiders, like in the stories?" Jack knelt beside him. "Yes, kiddo. But we're not helpless. Humans are clever. We don't just survive, we plan, we adapt, and we outsmart challenges." Leela frowned thoughtfully. "We can protect the homestead too," Jack smiled, ruffling her hair. "Yes. With the right strategies and teamwork, we can make sure everyone stays safe." The day began with preparations. Jack and Myra worked with the children to reinforce fences, check water traps, and build small lookout points along the canyon edge. Myra introduced a few clever ideas. Mirrors positioned to reflect sunlight as early warning signals, small noisemakers made from recycled materials to alert them of intruders, and decoy feed troughs to divert the herd if needed. "Humans can turn simple things into clever solutions," Myra said, her eyes scanning the horizon. "It's what makes us strong." Jack nodded. "Every invention, every small effort counts. Even the tiniest improvement can save lives." As the afternoon sun climbed high, a distant dust cloud appeared on the horizon. Jack squinted. The cloud was moving fast and the wind carried faint sounds, shouts, the clatter of equipment and the unmistakable hum of engines. "Raiders," Jack said quietly, his jaw tightening. "They're closer than I thought." Myra's hand rested on his shoulder. "Stay calm, panic doesn't help. Humans solve problems when they think clearly." Jack nodded. "All right, everyone to positions." Eli and Leela moved quickly just as Jack had trained them. Leela positioned herself near a small lookout, binoculars in hand, while Eli helped Myra adjust the decoy feed troughs. Jack moved among them, checking fences, ensuring the water traps were secure, and giving subtle signals to indicate when to act. The raiders appeared over the ridge, a small group with rudimentary hovercrafts, carrying equipment meant to intimidate. Their goal was clear: take resources from smaller settlements like Jack's homestead. Jack took a deep breath. "Remember what we practiced." Watch, listen, and respond. Humans can be smarter than brute strength. The first raider approached the decoy feed trough. As expected, the small noisemakers activated, sending a flurry of signals that confused and startled the intruders. The mirrors reflected sunlight into their eyes, and the herd, trained to respond to subtle cues, began to move strategically, creating a natural barrier. Myra whispered, "Now, Jack, time to guide them through the canyon paths." Jack shouted a few commands, using hand signals they had practiced. Eli and Leela helped direct the livestock, guiding them to positions that forced the raiders to slow down and rethink their approach. The raiders attempted to surround the homestead, but every step they took triggered another human-made trap. A small pit disguised with sand, a carefully arranged pile of rocks, and even subtle sounds made from hollowed logs, all worked in concert. Jack watched, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. "Look at that," he said to Myra. "The kids are doing exactly what we taught them. They're thinking, adapting, and helping us survive." Myra nodded, her eyes shining. "This is human ingenuity in action. It's brilliant." By the time the raiders realized they were being outsmarted at every turn, the human family had already gained a significant advantage. The intruders grew frustrated and disoriented, unable to navigate the clever obstacles and unexpected defenses. "Jack," Eli called, pointing to a small ridge. "They're stuck." Indeed, the raiders' hovercrafts were momentarily trapped in narrow canyon paths, unable to move without risking damage. Myra signaled, and Jack carefully guided the herd to form a natural barricade. The raiders' options dwindled further. One of the raiders shouted, "This isn't worth it, retreat." The intruders turned their craft and fled back toward the ridge, leaving the homestead untouched. Jack let out a deep breath, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Myra smiled warmly. They underestimated humans. They thought strength alone could win, but humans adapt, learn, and use their minds. Eli jumped up and down with excitement. "We did it. We protected our home." Leela hugged Myra tightly. "We really did it together." Jack smiled at them both. "Yes. Together." As the sun began to set, painting the canyon walls in deep reds and purples, Jack walked among the herd, checking for injuries or stress. There were none. The livestock had responded beautifully to their commands. The children had performed admirably, using every lesson they had learned over the past days. Myra joined him quietly, handing him a small piece of bread from her basket. "For victory," she said with a grin. Jack chuckled, accepting it. "I'll toast to that." They sat together on the porch, watching the sky darken and the first stars appear. The desert night was calm, almost peaceful after the tension of the day. But Jack knew the frontier would always be unpredictable. There would always be challenges, threats, and dangers. Yet for the first time since his brother died, he felt confident. Not because they had guns, shields, or brute strength, but because they had something stronger: human ingenuity, cooperation, and resilience. Myra leaned back, smiling at the children as they recounted every clever tactic they had used to outsmart the raiders. "You see," she said softly, "humans are capable of so much more than just surviving. We solve problems, we think, we care for each other, and we never give up." Jack nodded. "And that's exactly what we did today. The desert may be harsh, but humans can shine anywhere, even in the middle of nowhere." The children yawned, exhausted but proud. Jack led them inside, tucking them into bed. Eli whispered, "Do you think the raiders will come back?" Jack shook his head, smiling. "Maybe, but now we know how to stay ahead. Humans always find a way." Myra watched silently, her presence calming. She had seen many settlements fall. Many humans underestimate the frontier, but here, on this small homestead, human ingenuity and determination had prevailed. And in her heart, she knew that Jack, the children, and this rugged desert land were capable of much more. The night deepened and the stars shone brightly above. The homestead was quiet, safe, and strong. Jack stepped outside one last time, looking up at the endless sky. The desert had tested them and they had passed. Tomorrow, Jack whispered to himself, we'll make life here even stronger. Humans survive, humans thrive, and humans together are unstoppable. The wind carried a faint, comforting scent, Myra's bread, the smell of earth, and the quiet promise of hope. Jack smiled. The frontier was wide, dangerous, and unpredictable, but with ingenuity, care, and unity, anything was possible. And as he turned to head inside, Jack knew one thing with certainty. No matter what the desert or the universe threw at them next, they would face it together, human hearts beating strong, minds sharp, and spirits unbroken. The morning light spilled over the canyon walls, turning the rugged cliffs into brilliant streaks of gold and crimson. Jack stood at the edge of the homestead, his hands resting on the fence, watching Eli and Leela run toward the herd. Their laughter echoed across the valley, blending with the soft lowing of the livestock. It had been days since the raiders had tried to breach their homestead. The threat had passed for now, but Jack knew the frontier would never truly be safe. The desert had a way of testing humans, of pushing them to the edge. But what he also knew more than ever was that humans together could thrive anywhere. Myra emerged from her small camp, carrying a wicker basket that smelled of warm bread. "Good morning," she said cheerfully, setting it down on the table outside. "Thought you might like a fresh start to the day." Jack raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You're spoiling us." "I call it preparation," Myra replied with a wink. "A strong breakfast makes a strong mind and body." The children ran over immediately, eyes bright. Eli grabbed a piece of bread, his cheeks puffing with a satisfied smile. "Myra, this is amazing," he said between bites. Leela nodded, holding hers carefully like a precious treasure. Jack watched them, feeling a warmth he hadn't experienced in months. The desert could be harsh, lonely, and unforgiving, but this small moment, the simple joy of bread shared, reminded him why humans endured, why they persevered. Humans didn't just survive, they found ways to care, to create comfort, and to build joy even in the most desolate places. After breakfast, Jack gathered the children and Myra. "Today," he said, "we continue building. We'll expand our water collection system and reinforce the shelter. The desert doesn't wait, and neither do humans." Eli's eyes sparkled. "Can we use the mirrors again?" Jack nodded. "Of course. Humans can always improve, and we'll do it together." Myra carried the toolkit while Jack led the children to the wind trap. They adjusted panels, tightened wires, and carefully positioned mirrors to capture both wind and sunlight for maximum water collection. Every drop was precious in Kestrel's dry air. "This is incredible," Myra said, stepping back to admire their work. "Humans really do think of everything," Jack smiled. "It's in our nature. We solve problems, adapt, and create solutions even in the hardest conditions. And we teach the next generation to do the same." The children took turns making small adjustments, learning patience, observation, and the joy of seeing immediate results from their efforts. Leela noticed a slight misalignment in one of the panels and corrected it herself, earning a proud nod from Jack. Eli carefully positioned the mirrors, watching as the sunlight focused on the condensation chamber. By midday, the system was producing a steady stream of water. Jack poured it into a container, showing the children the results. "See this? This is human innovation. This is what makes us strong. We don't wait for life to make things easy. We make life better ourselves." The children cheered, their laughter carrying across the canyon. Jack looked at Myra, who nodded approvingly. "They're learning more than survival skills," she said softly. "They're learning how to thrive." As the sun dipped lower, a gentle breeze carried the faint scent of bread from Myra's basket, now resting beside them. Jack took a small piece, savoring it, and realized that these small comforts, shared meals, laughter, teamwork, were just as important as the practical skills they were learning. "Humans don't just survive," Jack said, speaking to the children. "We make life better for each other. We create warmth, joy, and safety wherever we go, and that is more powerful than any weapon or machine. Leela smiled, understanding more than her years might suggest. We can make the desert feel like home. Exactly, Jack said, ruffling her hair. With cleverness, patience, and care, humans can thrive anywhere. As night fell, Jack and Myra set a small fire outside the shelter. Eli and Leela gathered nearby, telling stories of their day, the clever ways they had adjusted the wind trap, the improvements to the shelter, and the fun of teamwork. Myra listened, her eyes shining with pride. "You see," she said, her voice gentle, "humans are unstoppable. Not because of brute strength, but because we think, learn, and care for one another. And we teach the next generation to do the same." Jack nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction. He had never imagined raising children would be this difficult or this rewarding. Every day brought new challenges, but also new triumphs. He had learned that human resilience was not just in enduring hardships, but in embracing them, adapting, and finding joy in the process. As the fire crackled and stars twinkled overhead, Myra handed Jack another piece of bread. "For the future," she said softly. Jack smiled. "For the future," he echoed, breaking off a piece and sharing it with the children. Later, as the children drifted into sleep, Jack stood outside, looking up at the vast kestrel sky. The desert stretched endlessly, a harsh and unpredictable frontier, but tonight it felt like home. Not just because of the shelter, the wind trap, or the herd, but because of the bonds they had formed, bonds of trust, teamwork, and human ingenuity. Myra stood quietly beside him. "They're growing up strong," she said. "And so are you," Jack chuckled softly. "I'm learning every day. I never thought I'd be teaching kids or having someone like you here helping us, but I'm grateful," Myra smiled. "Humans thrive together. That's what we do best." Jack nodded, taking a deep breath of the cool desert air. He thought of his brother, of the children, and of the frontier that had tested them so many times. He realized that human strength was not in facing challenges alone, but in facing them together, with creativity, care, and courage. The night was quiet, except for the soft murmur of the wind and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Jack felt a profound peace. The homestead was safe, the children were learning and thriving, and Myra's presence had brought warmth and hope to their lives. He thought of the days ahead, more work, more challenges, but also more triumphs. They would continue to improve the wind trap, fortify the shelter, and ensure the herd thrived. But more importantly, they would continue to grow together, learning, adapting, and celebrating the small victories that made life meaningful. Jack turned to Myra. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything." Myra shook her head. "No, thank you. For showing the true power of humans. The frontier may be harsh, but it can't stop us, and it can't stop your family from thriving." Jack smiled, a rare and genuine smile, feeling hope that had long been dormant. "Then let's keep going together." The night deepened, and the fire burned low. Eli and Leela slept peacefully, dreaming of new adventures and discoveries. Jack and Myra watched over them, sharing a quiet understanding that humans were capable of remarkable things when they worked together, cared for one another, and never gave up. The frontier was vast and unpredictable, but humanity, resilient, clever, and kind, was stronger. And here, on this small homestead on Kestrel, that strength shone brighter than ever. Jack took a final look at the stars, feeling the warmth of bread, the laughter of children, and the comforting presence of a friend who had become family. He knew the future would bring new challenges, but also new triumphs. And no matter what, they would face it as humans always did, together, resilient and unstoppable. As he stepped inside to rest, Jack whispered to himself, "The frontier may be wide, but humans are limitless." And in the quiet of the desert night, under the endless stars, the homestead slept safely, a beacon of hope, ingenuity, and warmth, a reminder that even in the harshest places, humanity could thrive together.